Dankeschön. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the afternoon session. Before we start, while you're finding your seats, let me say this very importantly. We love to have your feedback. The speakers, the team, everyone. I mean, not necessarily in the form that you shout at the speakers in the midst of their talks. That might happen if you have a lot of Unmut and anger. In that case, please grab somebody from the staff or shout at me or come up to us, talk to us. But do that, yes. Not everyone is as robust in his nature as Erik Spiekermann, and you can bet that our adrenaline level is on very high up here all the time. But please give us your feedback. We hand out questionnaires, which is it's a harmless sheet of paper with some questions on it after every talk. And we read every single comment and every single answer. We would love to hear about our work, about how did you like the speakers, about which speakers you would love to have here next year, and you can even win a ticket for TYPO Berlin 2018 if you participate. Okay, that was it. Yes, it's important. Yeah, I mean, thank you. Who was happy or unhappy enough to live in the 80s? I mean, consciously, as a teenager, a young adult. It was dark times, you know that. But there was one good thing, and that was the music. It was a big area of independent pop music and post-punk area, and I guess most of us remember a very rough logo from those days, which was a symbol for bands like The Smiths, Scritti Politti, the Young Marble Giants, The Fall, or the super famous Slits, a girl band. If you don't know them, check them out, from Great Britain. They were brought to us in Germany by, if we were lucky to have those friends traveling who brought those records to us. I was super happy to know that Rough Trade is still going strong, and that nowadays, after also supporting bands in the 90s and the 2000s, like the Libertines and the Strokes and others, they are kind of, it seems to be going back to the original idea of the record store. They were founded, Rough Trade was founded as a record store in 76, as far as 76, right? And they're kind of coming back to that tradition, and they also do a monthly magazine that seems to follow up with the tradition of the fanzine in some way or the other. And we are very happy to have the editor of this magazine here today. Liv Siddall is only 28 years old, Rough Trade is 40 years old, and she does a really good job there. Please help me welcome Liv Siddall.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. There's quite a lot of you, this is quite scary, but thank you for the fantastic introduction. It's nice to be introduced by someone who knows the history of Rough Trade. I will explain a little bit more about Rough Trade in case you don't know what it is, but I thought I would start by saying a bit more about who I am, just so you know. So who am I, obviously? So I used to, for 4 years I worked at a place called It's Nice That, and I was the online editor there and the features editor, and I wrote nearly 2,000 articles about art and design and magazines and illustration and comics and music videos. And I also worked, I'm one of the editors of Riposte, and I worked on printed pages, and I also wrote for another magazine and Dazed, and kind of I was in a space where I was freelancing a lot after I worked at It's Nice That and just writing for lots of independent magazines, and was very much involved in the independent magazine world, if you like. So as I was freelancing, I was kind of thinking to myself that I was quite not really enjoying it, because I kind of really missed having colleagues and staff, and I was getting quite lonely working in my bedroom on my own on these magazine articles. And I was kind of thinking about starting my own music magazine, because I'm really into music and I'm really into magazines. So I was kind of starting to think about doing that anyway, until one day, weirdly, I got an email through LinkedIn, bizarrely, and it was basically the guy from Rough Trade, and he found me on LinkedIn, and he said, we're looking for someone to come to Rough Trade this record store and make a monthly music magazine and a series of radio shows. And I was like, this is my dream job, so I have to take it. And so I went in and met them. And I've known about rough trade since I was a teenager. I used to come up from my small village where I grew up all the way to London and go to rough trade to buy CDs and records. And so I always loved it as a company anyway. So it was a real dream to kind of think that I could be part of that as well. So yeah, a little bit of history. This is Jeff Travis, who founded Rough Trade back in 1976. Rough Trade is now 41 years old. And this is him in the original shop in London. And it was just a kind of place where people would just kind of get together, and it was kind of like this hub. Like a lot of the musicians and bands would just kind of meet in Rough Trade, in Jeff's old shop, and it was like this community of people. And he went on to found the label, which is called Rough Trade Records, but the shop remained as well. And so now the shop, we have stores, we have 2 in London, 1 in Nottingham, and 1 in New York, like a really big one in New York. So it is kind of growing, and we're thinking about expanding more. So this is the one that I work in. This is Rough Trade East. This is, in my opinion, the best rough trade, because it's the funnest, and I get to work in there. I can't tell you what it was like when I first got the job to walk down Brick Lane in London towards rough trade and think that I was going to work in there. I felt like if I could tell my teenage self that, I would just die. So this is inside of rough trade. As you can see, we sell predominantly records, but also books and CDs, and we have in-store performances, so bands come and play in the shop where I work every day, which is great. I get to see a gig every day. And we have a kind of radio booth there, and we can record radio like podcasts and things with the artists that come in. So it kind of works really well. So my job that they offered me, it was going to be, so make some films of the artists and interview the bands who come and play in the shop, because the artists are coming in, we need to kind of get content from them, because otherwise it's a waste. Also, start a series of podcasts with bands and artists, which is really exciting, because I love podcasts, and you could just kind of take them into the radio room, have a chat, talk about music. They can pick records from the shop floor and then play them and talk about them, which is great. And then make a monthly 64-page magazine on my own for the company. So my excitement of working for Rough Trade, being like, yeah, cool, this is going to be great, the horror suddenly set in, and I was just like, oh my God, this is a job for like 12 people, not one person. And I had been so confident, and suddenly everything seemed to crumble around me. So I think today, because a lot of you are, or most of you are probably most interested in design, I'm going to concentrate on telling you about the magazine. And also the magazine is a part of my job that I feel is the most important of the 3 things that I do. And it was the one thing that I really wanted to get right and really kind of get the spirit of rough trade into this magazine. And the prospect of doing a magazine, which I never made before, was just terrifying. So this is kind of how I've been doing it. So when I first arrived at the job, I was looking at other music magazines out there. And in London, you get great music magazines. A lot of them are given out for free. And you just pick them up on the street, and they're of excellent quality, and especially things like The Wire, Beat especially. Like, there's a lot of music magazines already, and as you can see, they're very well designed, and they're quite serious. And I was looking at these, and I was like, shit, how am I going to even possibly compare to these things on my own? And these magazines have teams of 20 on each issue. And anyway, so I started looking at these, and I was thinking about what my own magazine would look like. And I started thinking about what I like, because I was like, actually, hang on, like, this is my magazine. I can do whatever I want. This is never going to happen again. So I was looking at the kind of things that I just loved when I was growing up. So like The Face, Smash Hits, ID, Viz is my favorite magazine of all time, Private Eye. And I was looking at these, and I realized that what kind of brings together all the things that I'm into is humor and kind of fun, this irreverent feeling. And I kind of thought that the other magazines maybe lacked a bit of that. So I was like, if I can make a magazine that's fun and silly, maybe then there's room for that. Like, there doesn't seem to be one out there already. So I was kind of thinking about doing that. And I started collecting together all these old references from like 1970s magazines and 80s magazines, kind of the magazines and zines which had a bit of attitude towards them, and they were quite fun and silly, and on every page there was someone smiling, or it just kind of gave you a feeling of, when you read them, you wanted to be part of that club, you wanted to be part of this magazine, and I kind of wanted to get that across in what I did. And visually I was thinking about how it would look, and I didn't really want it to look very serious, because I think I probably wouldn't be able to pull it off anyway. So I was kind of looking at loads of other visual references like this, and old concert posters and gigs and ticket stubs and old photos to try and think about the aesthetic of how the magazine would look. And looking at things like Maximum Rock and Roll, old zines, punk, also kind of trying to think about the history of rough trade and how that's going to all fit together and how I can make this magazine to sum up this company, and this kind of thing. So I had a really good time, collecting images of really good magazines together, obviously. But then I was like, how do I actually make my own one? Because it just seemed completely impossible. So I was there thinking, like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I've got all these references, I've got a vague idea, but how am I going to design it? And so one of the guys at Rough Trade, who's worked there for a while, he offered to design it, as well as his other full-time job. And I was like, oh, I don't know, that seems like it might be a bad idea, you haven't really got time to do it. And then my friend Bruce came into Rough Trade. This is my friend Bruce, and I met him when I was at It's Nice That. He is a fantastic designer, and his character is like this enthusiastic puppy of a man, and he is really just fun and great and cool. And I said to him, like, I've got to make this monthly magazine, I don't have a designer. And he was like, I'll do it. So he said yes, thank God. So we started working on it together. When Bruce agreed to be the designer, I kind of took him into Rough Trade, and I was like, I'm going to give you a tour of what Rough Trade is, because he had an idea in his head of what this shop is. But to me, Rough Trade, I don't know, I was kind of seeing that as I started working there, I saw the kind of like the backstage of Rough Trade, the bits that the customers don't see. So I wanted to show him like these bits on the wall that you see that like the staff have written. And stuff that staff see but the customers actually don't. And the bits like this, like it's a shop, it's full of boxes, there's stuff all over the floor, it's messy, it's dirty, there's constantly records coming in and then records going out, and there's sellotape everywhere, and it's messy. This is one of the tills, which I love. That's the one that gets taken to festivals. But the whole shop is like this. Everything's drawn on, or like someone's like kicked something, or it's kind of, it's a bit scrappy, and the floor's shitty, and, it's got these disco balls on top of piles of envelopes on top of, it's a mess. And this is the staff toilet, which was the room that I took Bruce into. I was like, this is the room you really need to see. And you don't get very many toilets like this these days. It's quite a rare thing. And if they were ever to paint over it or get a new toilet, I would be heartbroken, because look at it, it's perfect. It's like a shrine to how things ought to be or used to be. And there's loads of pieces of graffiti written by customers, by staff, and also by musicians. People come in to play a gig and they'll just write on the wall. So it's quite like a important thing. And I just thought that the toilets of Rough Trade really kind of sum up what this company is. It's this kind of big collective group of people, the staff, the customers, the bands, all coming together and writing and, being creative and messy and fun. And, there's this kind of dark humor behind it. So the toilets was like a really big part of the inspiration behind the magazine. And so Bruce saw all that, and then we sat down together to have a think about what is Rough Trade. So we came up with these things. So obviously music, that's a given. Music is what Rough Trade is about. That it's everything to do with it is about music. Being in the shop for a while, I kind of worked out, it feels like you're part of this family. All the staff love each other so much. And I think what we try and do is make customers also feel like they're family when they come in. You go to a certain member of staff that you like, you can kind of talk and sit and have a coffee and hang out for as long as you want and listen to music. It's quite like a family vibe. Smelly toilets, devoted customers who've been coming back for 40 years. The door is always wide open, even if it's like the middle of winter. Hangovers, everyone's hungover all the time. Lots of swearing, irreverence, the history of it that everyone is just so proud of. And just the fact that it's squidgy around the edges, it's a little bit dirty, it's kind of not very well organized, but there's a kind of beauty behind that. And of course, the staff. That's kind of what I realized. When I first got to Rough Trade, I didn't realize, but my role as editor was something that the director of Rough Trade decided they would do, but the staff didn't really want there to be a magazine. They didn't want radio shows. They didn't want any money to be spent on this. And they were really scared that someone was going to come in and actually get this really wrong. So I was quite aware that I had to make something that the staff really loved and wanted, and I wanted to get them involved in making it, because the staff there are just so great. They are the funnest people of all time. We all just are in there all day together, hanging out, talking, listening to music. We all go to the pub together. We all work at festivals together. It's this really amazing just group of people who just know everything about music, and they're just the most fantastic people. But yeah, for a long time when I started, they didn't really want to talk to me because they just were scared that I was going to make this magazine that was going to fuck up their company, which I understand. I would be the same. So I really felt this need to prove that I could do this and prove that I could make something for them as well as the customers. Oops. Yeah. Okay, so with all this in mind, this was the first issue that we launched in March last year. So yeah, 15 months ago. Me and Bruce made a decision that, the magazines I showed you earlier, the other music magazines, they always have a pop star on the front doing this. Or looking really serious. And we were just let's make a rule where we never have a pop star on the cover, which is probably a bit of a bad idea. But we decided that for this one, there was an interview in the first issue with a soul singer called Charles Bradley, and he has this pet parrot, and so we decided to put Charles Bradley's pet parrot on the cover instead of a pop star. I don't know if that was a good idea or not, but it's quite a cool cover. And we decided to put on the back cover everyone who was in it to kind of, we put all the staff names and the contributors to kind of make it this, to kind of show everyone that we wanted to show off the staff and the writers as much as the pop stars, which is quite nice. So I'm going to show you a few spreads from the first issue of the magazine, which has changed quite a lot over time, but to give you an idea. So Bruce was trying to work with my references from the old zines and the old magazines, and we made these kind of features together. This is by someone who writes about the time when Patti Smith came to Rough Trade East. That one was about the music inspired by J.G. Ballard. This is a section called Staff Picks, where I basically went around and asked all the staff to just send me in a recommendation or a musical recommendation. I think gathering these together is by far the hardest thing I do every month because no one remembers to do it, and it takes me weeks and weeks and weeks. But, just the fact that when I was first doing the magazine and I was really worried that they weren't going to like me, the fact that they did that was a really proud moment. And I think when they saw their names in print, hopefully they were kind of pleased about it. I think it's a cool thing to do anyway. And this is Charles Bradley, who has a parrot. And then we have I kind of started making columns and features. So this is a column called In Defense Of, where a staff member can basically own up to liking something that no one else likes and describe why they like it. So this is someone talking about Bill Wyman and his love for him. And we have a horoscope. So every month I ask a pop star, celebrity, band, whatever, to write the horoscope for that month. This is by Andrew Weatherall, the DJ. And then the inside back cover, we didn't have any adverts then, so I just, going back to Charles Bradley with his parrot, I found out that Charles Bradley actually is an oil painter as well, so we used his oil paintings inside the cover. So that was nice. So yeah, after that I was like, cool, done it, great, fantastic. And just was really proud of myself and basking in the glory. And then I was just like, oh my God, I have to make one every 2 weeks from now on. And so I had spent 4 months making the first issue, which was lovely. But then I realized with the design deadlines and the print deadline, I really have to pull together 64 pages of content every 2 weeks on my own. So this is quick methods of making it easy to pull together content for a 64-page magazine every 2 weeks on your own, which I have had to do. So the magazine is a monthly magazine because it celebrates the Rough Trade 10 albums of the month. So each month I am given those. And so there'll be a large feature with the album of the month, and then it will just be a feature that kind of goes through the other 9, sorry. So I've got that already, that's fine. That takes up about 8 pages, fine. And this is an example of the album of the month feature. So I'll be told, okay, Liv, in 2 months' time, Angel Olsen is going to be album of the month. You need to sort out a large interview and get photos done. And that's the bit I love best, because I have to work out where she is, which photographer to commission, and which writer to commission, and this kind of stuff. So I start working it out and planning it, and that's normally like a 6-page feature. Just to give you an example of how this looks. And this happens every month, so this is probably the largest feature in the magazine. This is one by Dee Dumbo. It's quite hard sometimes. Luckily, I've got, from my time at It's Nice That, where I knew thousands of artists and illustrators and designers, I can kind of call on them now, be like, hey, help me out, I need something photographed in like a week. Can you help me, can you help me? And then luckily they can. But sometimes, for instance, with this guy, he lived in a place called Castlemaine, which is out in the middle of Australia. I didn't know any photographers out there. So I just had to ask around on Facebook, and luckily we found this girl called Jameson Moore, who's a friend of a friend, to do the photographs. And I was like, cool, yeah, you go, I'll pay you some petrol money, just get out there and photograph him. And then I was like, shit, we haven't got a writer. And so I just said to Jameson, like, have you got any mates who might want to write it? And she was like, yeah. So I just let these 2 girls go off into the middle of nowhere in Australia and get the feature done. But it was actually one of the best features because the writer had never written before and the photographer hadn't done, well, she's done quite a lot, but it gave it this kind of really good innocence. And the interview was really amazing because it was just not your bog standard interview. It was a bit odd, and I like that. And the photos in the end were great as well. This is just more examples of this feature. Just to give you an idea of the kind of visual vibe we're going for as well. Lots of smiling people and nice photos. That's another one. So yeah, back to kind of like making the magazine every 2 weeks on my own. I thought the best way to do it is to kind of make loads of regular features and just kind of fill them in every month, rather than trying to make a new magazine every time. So if I could give someone, I give one person 1 page a month, all I have to do is basically nag them to do it, and then we just drop it in at the end. So that's probably quite easy. So I thought it would be great to get an agony aunt, because I love agony aunts in magazines. So you write in with a problem, and the agony aunt answers it. And so I was sat there thinking, who would be the coolest person to get for the agony aunt? And I was thinking about people who would be really hard to get. I was, in my mind, thinking like Brian Eno, or like, I don't know, like Dolly Parton or something. And in the end, I thought Jonathan Richman from The Modern Lovers would be like the ideal person, because he's funny, and he's clever, and he's great. And so I just kind of, I found an email for someone that knows him or something, and then it's a woman called Debbie who works in a record store near him, and I asked, and she said that he would be up for it, but he hasn't actually got a computer, so every month I have to get the letter of him. I think he writes it in a letter, posts it to Debbie, Debbie types it up, and then sends it to me every month, and it just happens. So we get all the readers to write in questions to him, emotional questions sometimes, and he responds, and this is what it looks like in the magazine. So this is a nice question. Do you think that nostalgia determines the way we engage with art and music? And he always just writes this really lovely emotional response, and then this incredible illustrator called Brecht Vandenbrucker does the illustration, which is great. So then also we have the horoscope every month. I thought at the beginning it would be quite difficult to email bands and artists and ask them for a horoscope without them being like, what? No. But actually everyone I ask, they're just like, yep, and they send it over straight away. I'm always quite surprised that happens. So yeah, it's just kind of like a silly, fun thing, but it's just filling up pages in the magazine that I don't have to kind of worry about. I just have to go and get the right person, ask them to do it, and they send it in, and it's done. Again, staff picks, that's every month. Sometimes we have like 6 pages of them, sometimes it's 1 page, depending on how everyone's feeling that month. And we have comics by Daniel Brereton, who is a music video director, and he does a comic for us every month as well, which is great, kind of music related. And then sometimes we have features, we have people coming into the shop to do events. So John Malkovich came in, which was fun, and he was signing some books that he had made. And so I just said, oh, is it okay if I ask you some questions for the magazine? And he was like, yeah, fine. So we talked about music for a while. And my friend Alex, who works around the corner, I just texted him, like, can you bring your camera around and photograph him, please? And so he came around and did that. So that's kind of features that can happen very quickly. Just kind of, you don't know what's going to happen, then suddenly someone famous is in the shop, and it just does. And it's quite cool to have John Malkovich in the magazine. Same with Martha Wainwright. We have a feature called My First, My Last, My Everything. And it's basically when a band or artist come into the shop and they just go through all the racks and they pick out their favorite records and we photograph them doing that and then they talk about each one. So it's like a really nice, easy feature that is about rough trade and about the artist, but it's quite friendly. It looks quite casual. And it's actually just really interesting. And then we have this feature called In Case You Were Afraid to Ask, which is, it kind of was born out of the back of a conversation I heard people having about, you know how record stores are quite scary? Well, rough trade, all the staff there are not actually scary. And if you can go to any rough trade staff member and ask them anything about any record, and they will be able to tell you everything about it. And so this feature is called In Case You're Afraid to Ask, and it's basically people, staff members, explaining a genre or an artist so you don't have to pretend to know. So it's just them doing a kind of polite guide to. And this one's about Cold Wave, something that I didn't know about, but it's very interesting. Okay, so about a month into me being at Rough Trade, this email went round. There's a guy who works in mail order called Joff, and he made a document on his computer of all the things he's scared of in this world. And that document got leaked and sent around the whole company. So it's just a list of things that he's terrified of. Which I'm going to show you, which he won't like, but these are things that Joff is scared of. Can you read it? I hope you can see it. There's stuff like putting warm food in the fridge, ordering food in restaurants, dentists, sitting in the bath and the bath falling through the floor, rats climbing out of toilets, and, I mean, there's loads of them. He's got tons. He's very scared of a lot of things. Dinner parties, beaks, bird beaks he's scared of. Anyway, so I thought this was a really funny list. And so I just said to Joff, would you like to describe why you're scared of something every month? And he was like, yeah, fine. So we turned it into a feature. So every month, Joff writes about why he's scared of something. This one is actually about how he is really scared to even try a peanut in case he's allergic to them. And this is a good one. This is him hosting a party. Terrifying, terrifying. So that's actually, it turned out to be one of the most treasured articles in the magazine. And people keep phoning up the shop being like, can I speak to Joff? He does my favorite feature in the magazine. It's not even about music, but, it doesn't matter. Also, another way of doing things is, and kind of filling up space quickly in a magazine. I don't really, after meeting a lot of bands, I found that a lot of them have to do their interviews when they're just in a tour bus, or they're really rushed, they don't really like it, and I think they find doing a lot of interviewing quite boring after a while, because they have to do 10 a day. So sometimes I just email the band, and I'm like, look, if I gave you 8 pages of this magazine, do you want to just do what you want? And they're like, yeah, cool. So sometimes they do photo diaries of their tour. So I send them money for some cameras, and they just take photos and then send me a WeTransfer link of the photos, which is great. This is Whitney, lovely band. Also, it's worth saying that I never expect them to actually send me the photos. They're on tour, they're never going to remember, but every time they do, and they're very reliable, sweet boys. This is a guy called Tim Presley from a band called White Fence. I knew that he was an artist, so I asked him to do a kind of 10-page comic for the magazine, which is nice. So it's kind of he's a musician, everyone loves him, but I didn't want to talk to him about the music. I wanted to talk about his artwork instead, and he was so touched to be asked as well. So that was really nice. This is, who's this? Alalars on tour again. Sometimes bands are actually really good at taking photos too, which is nice. These are very high quality. Very pleased with those. And this is a lady called Wise Blood who was going to this festival called Martha Myths. So I just said, take photos on your phone, send me 15 iPhone photos with captions and send them back. And then Bruce makes it look really good. Well, you can't really read it very well, but this is from the issue that hasn't quite come out yet. This is Kevin Morby, who he's got an album coming out next month, and I didn't want to interview him. He's actually a friend of mine. I didn't want to just do a bog standard interview like everyone else was interviewing him at the time. And we were talking, and he said that his new album is quite inspired by Patti Smith and her book M Train. And so I said, why don't you interview Patti Smith? But then Patti Smith was traveling, so she couldn't do the interview, sadly. So Kevin instead just wrote a love letter to Patti Smith, which is here. And then we just printed the questions that he would have asked Patti if she had said yes to the interview. So hopefully Patti's going to read this issue and then get back to us. Fingers crossed. Anyway, so in the same way that I'm handing over a lot of the features to the bands to do, I found out in about February or January that Mac DeMarco was going to be the album of the month in May. And I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be cool to get Mac to do the whole issue? And I kind of kept this quiet. I didn't tell my boss for ages, but I was emailing the label being like, do you reckon Mac would be up for guest editing the whole issue? And they were like, yeah, he's into it. And I was like, oh. Okay, so I just said, okay, well, if he could just send me 4 features, 2 interviews, a horoscope, and the cover, that's fine. And he was like, cool, yeah, he's on it. And so after I'd done that, I was like, I had given all my work to Mac DeMarco, so I didn't really have anything to do. So I was just sitting around all day, like waiting, just hoping that Mac DeMarco was getting on with editing the magazine. And, we were getting quite close to the print deadline, and Bruce was calling me like, have we got anything? And I was like, nope, nothing yet. And then it actually came through. So Mac commissioned his friend Benny Montero to do the cover on the left. We made it a 2-cover special. And then on the right, we decided to make another cover just to explain that Mac DeMarco was the guest editor. But yeah, Mac sent through all the content we needed, and it's a whole issue by him, not me, which is nice. And this is some of the spreads from the issue. So the 2 interviews he did, he just basically took his best friend Kieran Callanan, who's another musician, into his garden, and they just had a chat and recorded it very late at night. And they took these photos themselves with a kind of Brokeback Mountain vibe. And can you imagine me just like getting a folder through WeTransfer and being like, what is going to be in here? Like, what's it going to be? And then opening it and finding these photos, being like, yes, we did it, great. This is them. It's quite hard to read. This is about his mum's leather jacket. So this is the kind of vibe of his issue. And then his friend Joe McMurray did a photo diary, which is just him and his friends having fun in their pool. So, Bruce ends up making this look really good. We're presented with folders of stuff, and we're just like, I don't know, but it's just nice visual features, really. And then this is, I asked Mac if he could do like a fashion shoot. And so this is Mac's keyboardist, John Lent, and this is the fashion shoot he got, and he's just wearing the same T-shirt in every photo. So yeah, and then Mac's girlfriend did the horoscope, so that worked really well. So yeah, another thing is the budget. So the magazine, I have £1,000 per issue for contributors. So to fill 64 pages is quite difficult, which is why I sometimes rely on bands to do stuff for me, because I can't pay anyone. If we do like a large feature, like the Album of the Month feature, I'll probably pay the photographer £300. I can maybe pay the writer £200. That's half the budget gone on one feature already. So I have to be really careful about how I use the money. So a lot of the time I just end up doing things myself because it's cheaper. So this is a feature about Daptone Records in New York. I was in New York and I had a good camera on me, so I went to just photograph the studio myself, which was great. And yeah, just did that and made it into quite a big feature. This is a girl who works in Rough Trade New York called Sid, and she is great. And she goes to all the underground clubs and nights, and she's big on the scene. And I gave her some money for some disposable cameras, and then she just basically went out and photographed all the nights she goes to, and that's like a 10-page feature. So very cost-effective and also brilliant feature. This is something I found online, actually. It's just a list of albums and songs that sound like fart jokes. And I just emailed the guy that made it, And I was like, can I put it in the magazine? He was like, yep. And so just put it in the magazine. And it's really good. It doesn't really do anything that special. It's just funny. I think my favorite one is probably Piper at the Gates of Dawn, or maybe All Things Must Pass. Fantastic. But it's kind of like this magazine, again, going back to the other music magazines out there, they bring a lot of news and they give you reviews and really helpful information about bands. This is not that. The Mac DeMarco features, it's just a man in a swimming pool. This is just fart jokes. It doesn't, I'm not really trying to make this kind of like a weekly news thing. It can just be anything I want, which is great. And then sometimes, because we haven't got any money to commission a cover, me and Bruce just design it ourselves using the content in the magazine. And actually, those are the best covers that come out of it. This is issue number 6. It was like midnight, and Bruce was like, why don't we have a cover? And we had to go to print the next day. And so I was like, well, let's just, make a collage with hearts and stuff. And he was like, no, I don't want to do that. But we had to do it. So, so he did. And actually, it turned out really, really nice. Same with this one. Again, it was like midnight before going to print, and Bruce was tearing his hair out. And I looked at what month it was. It was October. I don't know what the star sign was, but I just went into the horoscope, found a quote from the right star sign, and just made that the cover using a photo we had from the issue, which, again, was one of our nicest covers and didn't cost us anything, which is good. This was breaking our rule of no celebrities on the cover, but it's Iggy Pop, so it doesn't matter. And it was the Christmas issue, and he was actually the album of the year. So we thought, okay, he's album of the year, great, whatever. And so there's a big interview with him and the Rough Trade director, Nigel, in the magazine. And then I was like, okay, we need to commission a photograph, because we can't use a press photo. And so I asked Iggy's people, and they were like, definitely not. And I was like, oh no. And so we thought about maybe doing like an illustration of Iggy, but I don't really like when people do that. I just kind of didn't know what to do, and we were looking at other options. And then one of the guys from the label emailed and said, oh, it turns out one of the guys from the Arctic Monkeys was there when they were recording the Iggy album, and he took loads of great photos. Do you want some of these? And I was like, yes, give them to me now. And it's a picture of Iggy in a Santa hat that was taken in summer that year. So it just couldn't be more perfect. So we used that. And then Bruce changed it up to make it look a bit pink and fun for Christmas. And that was great. Again, didn't cost anything. So that's another thing that we don't ever use press images, because I don't really like press images that much, and I don't really like having the same images in the magazine that everyone else has. So a way to get around press images. This is an interview with Ricky Gervais that we did after his film came out. I went to go and meet him, and it was like one of the best days of my whole life. And the press photos were terrible. Like, they were just not the right vibe for us at all. So a way we get around it is we know a really amazing collage artist called James Springle. And what we do is we just present him with all the images we have, and he just makes collages out of it. So we're kind of using the press images, but also kind of making it look a bit cooler. So he ended up doing this, which is way better than what we were going to use. So again, like, we didn't pay for any of the press images because they're just press images, but if someone cuts them up and makes a collage out of it, it looks better and it's free. So we do collages quite a lot. And again, this is an interview with Kirk from Metallica, and the press image wasn't great, so we just put stuff over it and made it look nicer. And again, press images, we just cut out the heads sometimes of the press images and just make them into a fun spread. So we could just kind of like tend to cut things up and make them funner when we're a bit short of what to do. And again with, oh my God, I've forgotten his name, Johnny Marr from The Smiths. These were the press images, the ones in blue, and they sent us a few older ones too, but Bruce works his magic and makes it look much better. So yeah, commissioning photography. I think that now I look back after doing 15 issues, commissioning photography is the most important thing for me, and it's the bit I get most pleasure out of. And I think with regards to the sort of visual references I showed you right at the beginning of what I wanted the magazine to be, when I looked back through those old magazines like The Face and ID and everything like that, like on every page there's someone smiling and everyone looks happy and they're just like cool photographs. And I don't want any band photographs that are moody or boring. I want to make sure that the photography is like it just makes you want to be part of this club. So if you Google band image, band photo, this is what you get. Like, that's just the most commonplace band photos. Very serious, very moody, lots of men standing there looking like this. You know, it's kind of the same every time. So, so going back to the kind of stuff I liked, I was like, let's just try and make it as different as possible. So this is the kind of thing I send to each photographer. I do brief the photographers very, very much in detail, and I talk to them a lot about what we need, and I send them the magazine so they can have a look at the vibe before. So I just kind of tell them that it shouldn't look like a press photo. And I'm just kind of like, I put at the end, I like it when people are holding coffee, smoking fags, being on the phone, leaning on something, relaxed, laughing, so that when people look at the photos and read the piece, they feel like they're pals with the person. So that's really important. And I also, a lot of the photographers have called me up after the shoot and been like, I kept what you said in mind, and I tried really hard to do what you've told me. So I think they take it quite seriously when I say to them, like, do not do a moody band photo. And I say that without fail, they have to get a photo of the band smiling, at least one, at least because then we have an option to use it, because sometimes they just don't want to smile. So these are the pictures that I send the photographers before they go on the shoot. So I like this picture of David Bowie holding some stuff. This nice picture here. This. Kind of pop stars just in their element, like smiling, being silly. This is like, a band in a skip. Kind of famous people hanging out together from that amazing Tumblr, where people are just like, eating something or leaning on something, or it's just kind of casual and non-posed, and this is what I really want to get across with the photos, and just stuff like this. So this is what I send the photographers, so they get the right vibe. And then we get results back like this. This is an artist called Holly McVeigh, and she is from the UK, and she's a country singer, and all the photos of her, all the press photos, are her like wearing this big hat, or like she's wearing like a floaty dress, and she's in a forest, and it's like misty, and or maybe she's on like an abandoned beach, and there's like her hair blowing. And I was just like, well, that's probably just like some guy in a label thinking, right, she's country, hold a guitar, stand on a beach, see you later. But, it's nicer if I send a cool photographer to go and shoot Holly and just be like, just treat her as a normal person, and it comes across way better. And Holly's actually smiling in the picture, which is better than her on the beach, like, Same with Angel Olsen. Like, often the photographers that I do send to go and photograph the bands, I know that they're fun people, because when I'm emailing back and forth with the photographers, I can tell if they're fun, and I can tell if they're going to have a really good day with the artist, and I can tell if they're going to put them at ease or have a good time with them. Cara Robbins, who photographed Angel Olsen, did an amazing job and took her out to this amazing library in LA, and just in every photo, Angel's just like giggling or smiling, and that's exactly what I want. And similarly, the Big Moon, they are photographed a lot. They're a great band from London, all girls. But a lot of the time, the Big Moon are asked in interviews what it's like to be like a girl band, and they get quite pissed off. And no one seems to ask them about why they're so good at playing guitar, or about their instruments, or about their skill, or about them as a band, because the fact that they're a girl band is their kind of unique selling point, which I find quite annoying. So I wanted to show the Big Moon as instrumentalists. So I sent a photographer to go to their studio when they were rehearsing to do kind of live action shots of the girls, like not on stage, but just rehearsing with their instruments. And they just turned out great, because you see them as kind of amazing instrumentalists, not as just girls in a band, which I thought was really cool. And then sometimes just shoots like this. This is Cara Robbins again. She just always nails it. And this is Foxygen, just having a good time. So, again, album of the month, lots of smiles. And this is when the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, came to visit the shop and was picking out some records and was hanging about in the shop. And I wanted to photograph him, obviously, but I didn't want it to be like the mayor's normal photos where he's like in a suit and he's looking very serious. So I got my friend Nina just to come down with like a disposable camera, basically, and just get him on that. And when do you ever see the mayor of London photographed like that? Like, it's just so nice and friendly and fun, and he's smiling, which is great. Sometimes we just draw things on the photos to make them more interesting. That's just an example. Yeah, more examples. This is, sometimes I just send photographers, the ones that I really like and know and love, I send them out to festivals with cameras, and they go backstage and just photograph all the bands that they possibly can, which we print as well, which is lovely. And yeah, this is kind of most of the magazines we've made so far. It's been 15 issues now, and it's weird because when I first started, it was quite difficult to collect all the content and to get it done on my own every 2 weeks. And then with Bruce, it's hard. But actually now I'm finding that there's not enough pages. Like, I've got way too much stuff to put in it. And every month we have to cut down the content because I've got too much stuff. And we've got to the stage now where people come into the shop and they want to buy the magazine. They don't want to buy the records, they want to buy the magazine, which is cool. And it's just got to this really nice place. And yeah, what I kind of wanted to say was, whenever I was looking at magazines when I was younger, like a teenager, I used to think, if this magazine was a person, like what kind of person would they be, and would you want to be friends with them? So I used to look at Vogue. My sister used to bring back all her Vogues from London, and I'd read them, and I'd think, well, if Vogue was a lady, it would be this kind of very posh lady who likes horses, and she's got lots of money for handbags, and she knows where to go for like a nice lunch. And then if it was Elle magazine, it would be like a bit of a younger woman. Maybe she's got a really intense job, and she's quite sexy and cool and clever. And then if it was something like Grazia, it would be sort of like a kind of bitchy, clever lady. Or if it was something like Monocle, it would just be a very smart, cool man with spectacles. Or, you know what I mean? Like every magazine you can basically say like that's a person. And when I was first making Rough Trade magazine, I just wanted it to, if I was thinking about like, if this magazine was a person, would I want to hang out with them? And what I think I have made is a magazine that is friendly. It's really open. It's got a lot of swearing in it. It's colorful, and it's funny, and it's silly. There's often mistakes in it. It's very like slapdash. It's got loads of different voices, different opinions, different vibes, and it's just kind of loads of fun. And hopefully it represents all these bands and represents the music scene that Rough Trade is. Just this huge collection of voices and artists and people and sounds and different genres. And I mean, most importantly, like the staff of Rough Trade, I would like to think that the magazine is it's just every personality of the shop just in one, to make a magazine that basically, if it was a person, would just be a really great, music-loving, fun, excitable, silly person, and hopefully have done that. And that's it. Was that too short?
You're perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Right.
We have a few minutes left.
Oh.
Please stay with me.
Okay.
Or would you want to run
No,
away?
I'll start, yeah,
Thank you so much.
Don't worry.
That was
Thanks for
amazing.
coming.
I think we are all overwhelmed by your work, by what you showed us, by bringing up so many memories. In my case, it was Jonathan Richman. We traveled across Germany to see his concerts.
No
it's crazy.
way.
And also for bringing up, for remembering us of the British magazine tradition.
Yeah.
They're collectibles.
Yeah, they're great. Loads of great magazines.
How do I get yours?
The magazine's in the shop if anyone wants them, but there's only like 40 copies, so...
40 copies only?
Yeah.
That's not enough.
Well, you can buy them online.
Thank you so much.
No
That was
worries.
really lovely. One delicate question, because you started off saying that it's rather stressful to fill those 64 pages.
Yeah.
And then it turned to be fun.
Yeah.
Is it more fun to work with lower budget?
Yeah, definitely.
We won't let know our clients about that, but
No, it is, because you
Yeah?
have to push yourself and find out new ways of working, because you haven't got loads of budget, so you have to find new ways of, making features and stuff.
will you stay around?
Yeah, I'll stick around.
Okay. Thank you so much,
Don't worry.
Lister.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.